Occasionally, thanks to Zero, it's become all literary events should be like this. The way he's organised it, I think we're all in the mood to hear and read some of Gregory Nalpon's work until now, for maybe 30, 40 years now, unjustly overlooked. But thankfully, with this new edition, or the first edition of Gregory Nalpon's writings, the Wayang 8 Milestone, we're selling them outside. We would urge you to get a copy if you haven't got one anyway. And Edmund made a very good point. Why not buy one now? Then you can follow the readings. It's a possibility anyway. So, I mean, what am I doing here? An aging Angmo? It's quite strange that I should be the person who kind of, not exactly discovered Gregory Nalpon, but kind of had an interest. And it kind of all started moving to Singapore and discovering in Robert Yeo's collection of Singapore short stories, one that was used in schools in the 1970s, the story The Rose and the Silver Key. And after reading that story, I thought, goodness gracious, it kind of knocked me off my chair. And I think in a way, to use an intellectual phrase, that's what good literature should do. It should kind of knock you off your chair. And so to read, there's wonderful other stories in that collection, but that story really haunted me. And I really started to ask the question, there must be more stuff. Robert Yeo gave us hints that there are other stories. He obviously knew Gregory Nalpon. And so I went on the search for more material. And for a long time I couldn't find anything. But then I encountered Zero's name, and it all kind of started from there really. Phoning his secretary, who kept giggling for some reason when I was talking to her. I got through to Zero, and I talked to Zero's sister Jacinta, and then a stream of what I thought a goal, some wonderful kind of literature came forth, and slowly but surely, we, as Jacinta kind of transcribed these manuscripts, she, handed them on to me, and we put them together into this book that we have today. I also wanted to thank an absolute friend, Jason Bloomberg, who was going to be here from Epigram, who was going to read. Unfortunately, he's not so well today, but maybe in tribute to the work he did, because in a way, Epigram were very keen to publish this, and he did a great deal in getting this book published. I'll read one of his favourite pieces that is in here. But enough from me. Maybe I could just start to read a little bit from The Rose and the Silver Key, the story that really, to me, started this whole ball rolling. Okay, The Rose and the Silver Key. I find it in a weird way, because for a while I knew the story of The Rose and the Silver Key, and it's almost like, to me, down to death. I've been away from it for a long time, and I thought, I'll come back to this time. I'm just going to read a section, because it's quite long. I'm going to read a section, and then if we have time, I'll read the rest. Okay. So, The Rose and the Silver Key. There used to be a rubbish heap under the great tree in Doby Gaunt, with a Sarabat stall parked next to it. It was a low, sprawling rubbish heap, made of the usual things: refuse from dustbins, paper, old tins and slippers, and leaves from the tree above. Then one day, people forgot about it. They found a new dumping place, and the old rubbish heap settled low on the ground. Time passed, and its contents became warm and rich and fertile, and people living in the area would take away potfuls of it to plant flowers in. Somehow, a rose cutting, slim as a cheeping chicken's leg, almost brown, appeared on the rubbish heap one day. Rain fell, sun shone, and it took root. Secretly, the brownness of its stem was replaced by green, and shiny, tiny leaves appeared on the stem and grew larger, and finally a rose bloomed forth. A large red rose, bending its stem almost level to the rubbish heap. The stem now had 9 leaves and 14 thorns. A man called Hamid owned the Sarabat stall on wheels, a Pakistani, tall and lean and very tough, with a well-groomed, sharp moustache and eyes gleaming the light of lizard's eyes. The stall was no different from any of the hundreds of Sarabat stalls in Singapore. A canvas roof, spoked wheels, aluminium counter, easy to wipe clean, with a damp cloth, brass urn with compartments for hot coffee, tea and Sarabat, the urn pierced by a funnel in which charcoal embers constantly glowed, and 3 taps attached to the ear. Hamid was the ordinary type of Sarabak stall owner, except for his shiny lizard's eyes and his military moustache waxed into 2 sharp barbs, thrusting away from either cheek. He had large teeth stained with the juice of beech nuts. He seldom spoke, and nobody had ever seen him fight. Yet no gangsters in those times of the pin machines and jukeboxes of the Tony Curtis hairstyle ever tried to collect protection money from him. They never presumed upon his toughness. They took it for granted, in the same way as you would accept the strength of a tiger's jaw without testing it. Soft-eyed boys, bums, men grown tired of wives' toys, all who sit around the benches of Hamid's stall respected him. He was a man of pride, strength, silence and compassion, no beggar or thirsty schoolboy with only a bus fare in his pocket, or those who hunted vainly for a job without success had to pay for a drink, a bun, or a cigarette at his stall. And I often wonder with that if Gregory Nalpon was talking about himself really being is he the person who hasn't got the money for a bus fare or a bun? Making his way back from SJI to Channing. Okay, Hamid dozed by his stall every night, a carbide lamp on the stall, hissing a small point of white flame, declared that you could still buy a coffee, tea or sarabak there, no matter what the time. He said whatever money he had going back to his family in Pakistan every month. He had been in Singapore for 11 years and had never once returned home. He had no friends. He never allowed himself any friends. He had never seen a film. He did not read the newspapers and probably knew almost nothing about what went on in the next street, because he never left his stall. He worshipped God without naming him. If he was lonely, he never indicated it. His sole recreation seemed to be in cultivating this expert moustache. And then the rose appeared on his rubbish heap behind the stall, and Hamid found comfort in it. The rose was his love, his child, his God. He gently placed used tea leaves around the stem and constantly watered it. His customers noticed his activity, but none of them ever ridiculed him or attempted to pluck the rose. His lizard's eyes glowed with more intensity, and the points of his moustache became even sharper with the advent of the rose. And in the evening, he smiled at Fatima for the first time when she sat down by the stall for her usual order of coffee before starting work in the bar across the road. Fatima was a very pretty woman. She had long hair and wide eyes and lips like 2 petals of Hamid's rose. The sight of her figure in clinging kabaya and sarong always incited blushes on the cheeks of sober men. Heavy gold bangles on her wrists tinkled pleasantly whenever she moved. A silver key hung from a chain around her sweet neck. The key was made of real silver. Rumour was that she hired out the key for $25 a time. It opened the door to her room. Fatima was a very desirable woman, and she wasn't shy at all. She'd shout across the road to anyone she knew. She was the cause of many fights in the bar across the road for merely smiling at more than one man at the same time. She also displayed a small hint of inconsolable regret for her way of life, which made kind men imagine that they shared her company purely to relieve a weight of sin. As a result, Fatima had collected a tiny sum of money at the post office. I often wonder, have we read the manuscript right? Should it be tiny sum or is it tiny sum? But there we go. Something for scholars to think about. She wasn't exactly ladylike, but she behaved herself at a minstrel. If she ever stepped out of line, it was only to whisper small invitations and promise delight to the meet, who would sound his disapproval with a snort and a twirl of his moustache and turn away. When the rose bloomed and Hamid smiled at her, Fatima forgot herself and blushed. For at one moment she looked like a young girl upon whom a man's eyes had rested for the first time. It was just for one moment, and then the look was gone. "And what have you done that you are so kind to me today?" she said. "Maybe you want to marry me, huh?" Hamid's moustache quivered as he withdrew his smile. He snorted and looked away, but his lizard's eyes shone. He dipped his hands into a pail and with cupped palms he drew some water and walked over to the rubbish heap. He stooped beside the rose and let the water drain from his fingers into the plant, and he stood up, looking satisfied. The sun setting behind the rooftops touched the rose, and to Hamid it was the most beautiful thing on earth. Fatima saw the rose and came to the rubbish heap. "Give me that rose," she said alluringly. "Pluck that rose for me and I'll lend you my silver key for half the usual price." Hamid ignored her. "Look at my lips," she said. "Do you consider my lips sweeter than all the roses in creation? Come, give me that rose, and I'll let you taste my lips." Hamid turned away to his usual place behind the stall. The other customers avoided his eyes. It was getting dark. He applied a match to the nozzle of the carbide lamp, and it hissed into life. I'm just going to leave it there. Leave you hanging. Wanting more. Okay, we'll just leave that for a moment. Thank you very much. Yes. Must be something to be said for it. As I said, I'm profoundly grateful to the Nalpon family for trusting me. There have been other writers that have been involved, dead writers, who have unfortunately passed away, who I've been involved with, who haven't always been as helpful as the Nalpon family have, really, in allowing me and trusting me to kind of collect their work and kind of publish it and so forth. And Zero is a very busy man. He's involved in lots of things. Sometimes we see reference to him in Stress Times and so forth. He's a thing of interest, like his father. But when he has had the time, and certainly Jacinta as well, have given me a great deal of support, and I've kept badging them, and they've been extremely generous, and also patient with me, I think. So thank you very much. I should say thank you to the Nalpon. And Zero has very kindly said that he would come and perhaps say a few words about the book, and perhaps read a small excerpt. So thank you very much, Zero.
I've never attended any of these book launches. Lucky I've copied it. But still, Dad's book. To begin, we don't have many photographs up here, there's only one. But my father, my mom, that's Patrick. Please stand. Please stand. And I don't know who this is. Unionist. So, yeah. For me, I grew up reading some of these stories. Father gave them to me sometimes to read, we saw in magazines. But never would I have thought it would come in a book like this. 28 stories about them. And to see it in print, nice layout, a very good write-up in the back, and a few pages of a timeline done by Angus.
Yes.
Which we need to fill up because it's a bit bare. But I'm very proud to be here. I hope you all enjoy the bites and the wine. If you had it, there's still whiskey as well. We hope we don't finish too early because we do have more drinks. So, my sister asked, will you be doing a reading or will you be saying anything? I said, I won't do a eulogy because my dad passed away in 78, so a long time ago, and it's not a place or time. But a reading, so today I took the book, and I actually haven't read this book as it is. I've known many stories, but I never read this. When it first came out in soft copy, I guess I did read some of the stories, and some are new to me. So I flipped open this book, and I saw this nice story called Two Faces. It's a short one of 2 pages. I'm not sure what page is there. But I had never read this story before. Now I don't do readings as well. But in court, I mean I'm a lawyer, so in court we use people. But I read my own stuff, so it's easy. So this story, Two Faces, it is just about 2 pages long. Involves two chaps, 2 boys. The story is told at a young age, and then it jumps to what they're doing today. So,